Anne is a native Floridian from Boynton Beach, Florida. She has lived and ministered in the Chicagoland area for the past 3 decades. She has served as a catechist, elementary and high school religion teacher, director of religious education, pastoral associate, campus minister, hospital chaplain, and director of the intellectual path in the formation department for permanent deacons. Recently, she was serving as the parish vitality coordinator for Vicariate 2 with the Archdiocese of Chicago. She has a master's in divinity degree with a specialization in family catechesis. She and her family moved to Venice, Florida in February 2020. And Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you. 90 days. I just finished my 90-day. Woo. Yeah, lots of, who would have known 50 days ago that we would be in the midst of this corona crisis, but we are. So thank you to John for inviting me, being part of this virtual marketing strategy. I think that this is a gift that we have this opportunity to kind of learn from each other, because many people would not have participated in this if they had to drive. Seems to be a driving issue around here, even though when I worked in Chicago, I lived 2.5 hours away from my office, and I did that every day for 4 years. So driving is not an issue. But here we are. So my presentation is on working together as a parish staff. And I wanted just to share with you that what I have found over the years is that many people have good and bad relationships. And so I'm not coming at this saying that principals and DREs normally don't work together. I'm hopefully at the end of this, you will see that if they're not working together, there are lots of great possibilities. And then I'm hoping that they are working together, and we'll share ways that they should be. And if they're not, can help bring them together. So this is about parish and school staff relationships and how they're working together. The first is that it is part of the National Directory on the Catechesis from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, that it is the primary responsibility of the catechetical office to work in unison with the parish school and the religious education program. If you don't have a parish school, but you have a regional school, or you have a school that is sponsored by multiple parishes, there should be a designated DRE that is assigned to that regional school for insight, oversight, and programming. It is part of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops directory policy that says this needs to happen. So in the NDC, which is the National Directory of Catechesis, number 20, it identifies 6 different tasks of catechesis that should be happening in the Catholic schools and parish religious ed programs in the RCIA, so that this process can be continued among all age groups. That it says that we don't want to just have all the kids K through 12 receiving high-end religious education and parish K through 12 is receiving nothing. We want it to be comparable, understanding that the directory calls for parish religious ed programs to offer 30 hours of religious instruction in the year, whereas in Catholic schools, you have 180 days of instruction, and each day there should be 40 minutes devoted to religion. So you could see numbers-wise, there's a lot more time in religious ed classes in a parish school than in a religious ed. But it's not to say that one is better than the other. So catechesis, what is it? Catechesis promotes knowledge of the faith. Catechesis promotes knowledge of liturgy and the sacraments. Catechesis promotes moral formation in Jesus Christ. Catechesis teaches Christians how to pray with Christ. Catechesis prepares the Christian community to live actively in the life of the church and go out, missio, go out to serve the world. And then catechesis promotes a missionary spirit that prepares the faithful to be present as Christians. This catechesis is for not only catechists, so volunteer religion teachers in this religious ed program, but the religion teacher, grade school teacher at the Catholic school. They both have the same priorities. So what does this mean to you as a principal or a DRE? This means that we are all serving the same mission. Our mission is to form missionary disciples. So as parish directors of religious educations and school personnel, together we all have the same focus and mission. So how does this all work? Well, the principal and the DRE has a partnership. Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's effective, but basically you both are working for the same goal, to prepare missionary disciples. The principal sees her people, her teachers, her staff all day long, 6-7 hours a day for 180 days. So they have a long time to be with each other. There's also a strong accountability, which means that the teacher employs the staff, the principal employs the teachers and the staff. So there's a contract, there's a payment, there's a evaluation, there are goals, there's accreditation, there's certification. There's all these things that a principal has that she can share with her teachers and staff or use in a hiring, or not. The director of religious education has a working relationship with the catechist, but the catechists are volunteers. So even though there is a relationship, it can be fractured because the relationship is not a contract. There's no money exchange. There's no payment. There's no, really, there needs to be evaluations. Many times the DRE doesn't have the time to do that, or there's no mechanism for that to happen. The catechist is a volunteer, and the catechist may or may not have a grounded education in what she or he is teaching. Unlike a school teacher, they are grounded in specific knowledge about elementary or about high school or a specific topic. They might be certified with a special ed degree, or they may be certified with STEM, more experience in math or science, specialization. Or our catechist may or may not even have a teaching degree, may or may not even have a firm foundation in their Catholic faith. So there are some factors that may make it a little bit difficult. But universally, they both work for the parish, the same parish. And again, they have the combined goal of making missionary disciples. And this comes from the Gospel of Matthew with the Great Commission. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. So we have the same mission. Now, how does this work? So how are we currently serving our community, our church, as disciples? Well, based on this gospel reading, it should show that we have a knowledge that I have to make disciples. That's my job. As a baptized Catholic, I am baptized and made a disciple at my baptism. Let me go back to this for a minute. but many people do not believe that they are disciples. Many people believe that they are not, they're not the disciple. The disciple is the father, the priest, or the sister, the nun, or the religious brother, or some very holy person. They're not the disciple. That they have, they go to church, they sit in the pew, but they don't really see themselves as a disciple. But we all are. That's what happens at our baptism. We are made to be disciples. So because we don't believe or see ourselves as disciples, we seldom share our faith with other people. So we tend to keep our faith personal. We isolate our faith from other people. We don't normally share our knowledge of our certain grade level expertise with other people. We keep, third grade, we might share it within our unit with other third graders, but we seldom share our talents and knowledge with each other. This is teacher to catechist, and this is also principal to DRE. We seldom minister together as a community of disciples. The Catholic school personnel sees them as siloed or separated from the parish staff personnel. Very, very rarely do they mingle together. They probably don't pray together. They may come together at Christmas or holiday parties, where they have a big appreciation for the school staff, and then the DRE would come, but probably not bring catechist. Or at the end of the year, there might be a volunteer party where the catechists come and anybody that volunteers for the church, but you never see teachers there. So there's really no co-mingling between the two buildings. Let's just put it that as buildings. Prayer is often shortened in the beginning of class time, that people find that, I got to get through these lessons. I only have a certain amount of time during the day. So I'm just going to do a very quick prayer and get on with my teaching. And that goes for both school and religious ed programs. And then there's also a lack of trust between the two. So because we don't know each other, we foster a lack of trust, and especially if they come in and they use each other's materials. So if a catechist, if your religious ed program ends up being in the classroom of the parish school, there's usually a feeling of, we're here to borrow the classroom, the desk in the classroom, but we really don't belong here. We're guests. And so that typically, through my years of experience, that typically is what I've seen happen with, the parish school and the religious ed programs. And so, we do see it separated. And so what can we do to break down those levels of separation or break down those walls of isolation? And so what can we do together as disciples to achieve the mission? All right, so first of all, we first have to identify that there's an issue, that we really don't know. The school staff really doesn't know the parish staff. So the first thing we want to do is for having the principal spend some time with the DRE, even if it's a one-on-one coffee. What do you do? How do you spend your day conversation? We also want to be able to pray together and to foster a healthy prayer life. So the DRE should be assisting the principal and the school teachers with prayer resources, maybe even be the person leading the morning prayer at the school over the PA, working with the children, teaching them how to pray using the classrooms and things like that, helping the class teachers set up their prayer corners. So that the DRE is a resource for the school. According to the National Directory, that is very, very, very clear that that should be happening. Does it? Probably not, but it should be, you know, because the DRE is also the director of religious education for the Catholic school as well. As a matter of fact, the policy should be including a desk or an office space in the school building that the DRE should be, that's where the DRE should have her office. It really should be in the school building so she can be there, or he can be there during the day to assist the teachers. Now, whether that's afternoon because there's evening classes for religious ed, so that the teacher begin to lean on and get resources from the director of religious education so that her religion classes can be enhanced, and they see it as a partnership, that the DRE isn't just there for the volunteer catechist, but these Catholic school teachers are also catechists, so she should be there to assist. So there's this strengthen, nurture, and support one another, that they maintain a healthy work-life balance, that the DRE and the principal appreciates and understands what each are responsible for. So if the DRE is there in the school building, she wouldn't go over into grade 5 and say, you know, go over to the school building and say in grade 5, hey, you guys need to stop talking. You know, she wouldn't go and discipline a 5th grade teacher's class. That's not her lane. That's not her responsibility. So that they have clear boundaries as to who's doing what. And then communicate. So one of the things that I hear a lot of is that we have, you know, a lot of people say that catechists go into a classroom at 4 or 5 o'clock at night. Sometimes the classroom is a mess. Sometimes the kids' books are not even put away, that the catechist has to go and kind of clean up the classroom. And then the next day, there's a report given to the pastor or the DRE that somebody came in and moved stuff around in the classroom. So there's always a feeling that we're guests or we really don't belong here. So we'll talk later about how to kind of break that down, but that's usually what happens. You know, and ultimately we want to say that we're in this together, that our goal is to make missionary disciples. So how do we do that together, feeling, you know, that the Lord has sent us to do this and that we're here to do it, but have it done in a fun and effective way. So let's talk about a little bit regarding, you know, how can this happen? So I will stop sharing and get your faces back on here. So one of the things that we could say is, if you could see if the religious education program could have the same books as the Catholic school. So you both are using, so say like you're both using Loyola Press or Sophia Press. The Catholic school has the same books as the religious education. So then that makes people more on the same level. So you don't want to say, you know, well, our kids have, you know, Flom Gospel Weeklies where they get a little magazine and that's their religion book for the year. They get one of those a week. But the Catholic school gets a full book and there's all this. You know, you want to make sure that the public school kids are receiving the same knowledge as the Catholic school kids, because the kids are Catholic. You know, there's not one better than the other. They're both Catholic. So that could be a first way to start breaking down barriers, you know, because if you're both on the same, and you're equal playing field, then you can both have a respect for each other. The next thing is, because the DRE comes, the Diocese of Venice would not hire this director of religious education if she did not have advanced degrees in theology. So they have to either have a bachelor's or a master's degree in religious education or theology. So lean on that person as the expert in that topic. You know, you wouldn't have a director of religious education with a science degree. So if you do have a director of religious education working in your parish, lean on that person so that she or he can provide resources for your school, your classrooms. You have a lot of kids, teenagers that need service hours. So how do you, how can they in the community do service hours for your school, but also in religious ed? Are there events in the parish that your school children could assist in? Are there different things that we can, that you could do in partnership, but understanding that, children, teenagers are not, the grunt workers of your school carnivals or that kind of thing, that you use the volunteers effectively so that you can continue to reinforce we're making missionary disciples. Then also the DRE could be there to help with retreats. So the beginning of the year, if there's a retreat that the school teachers want, or you want to have a retreat, the DRE is very familiar with doing retreats. That should be his or her school skill set to be able to provide these retreats for the school teachers. And then also the other way around is, what can the school then do for the religious education programs? You're probably asking, well, what about those of us that are doing religious ed? What can we do to help the religious ed programs? First thing is, begin calling the school the education center. It's not the parish school or the parish religious education. It is the education center of the parish, which means you have day and evening educational programs going on in that building, so that the children, when they come in the evening for religious ed, they are welcomed in the building. It is a parish building. So even little signs that you could have in the classrooms. We welcome our religious education students. Please feel at home. We love having you here. You're our special friends. Anything that gives those children a value that they belong there. Signage, welcoming, making sure the classrooms are there and accessible for the children to use in the evenings. Yes, will there be a time where a child uses a pen or pencil out of the desk of some little fifth grader? Probably will happen. Expect that to happen. But we also need to train our catechists to say, make sure that the kids have the materials they need. This isn't a free-for-all. They can't just use whatever they want. And then you have the working relationship between the DRE and the principal, so they see it as a partnership, and they see it as a way that, together we're here to make missionary disciples. We're here to make many saints. We're here together collectively. And we need to put down our, my world, my classroom, you don't belong. We need to put that away, because that doesn't come from Jesus. That's not the message. That's not what comes from the Great Commission. So, will we have personality differences? Absolutely. Will we have people that have a difficult time understanding that this school also belongs to the religious ed program? Right. But at the diocesan level, that would be my job to come in and try to work with your staffs to try to come to some middle ground. Or in your other diocese, the director of religious ed for the diocese, that's responsibility to bring the school and the religious ed communities together, whether that's a retreat or a conversation. The pastor also needs to be on board, because the pastor is ultimately the linchpin between the DRE and the principal. So the pastor is the one that really is the one that brings that together. Now, granted, we know that there are some parishes that have one pastor serving 4 or 5 communities, But as often as you can get that pastor to bring the DRE and the principal together, the easier it's going to be. Now, before I go off and ask for questions, I'm just going to tell you a scenario of an experience that I had with a pastor. There was a parish that a pastor he would go into the school and he would yell at the children. He would have confession once a year, and he would tell the teachers they're awful. He was very negative, and he actually, the principal refused to invite anybody into that building. She protected those children. That enrollment went from 584 children to 165 kids in 3 years. And it wasn't because the education was awful, it was because of the atmosphere. The children were scared to come to school. They were scared to, see father down the hall. He was just a mean, grouchy guy. And so they saw that the attendance was dropping, that all those numbers of kids going to other schools, obviously red flags were going off. So that pastor, unfortunately, had a massive heart attack and was unable to continue working. And so the bishop put a new pastor in there who had just closed the school. And this new pastor came in and he was depressed. He was feeling unloved because he had to close a school. He was feeling as though this wasn't anything, a place that he didn't really want to be in. But luckily, he had the foresight. He was only 40 years old. He had the foresight to say, I gotta turn this around. He sought help and he got counseling, and he became this pastor that fell in love with making missionary disciples. So he had a conversion experience through the prayer, a lot of prayer by the parents, by the teachers, by the catechists. Everybody was praying for Father Robert. He had a conversion experience. He began to go in and work with his DRE and his teachers. Every day he would be out in the parking lot saying hello to the children as they're being dropped off. He was going into the school in the morning, doing the morning prayer. He was there in the afternoon. He had teacher conferences. He had teacher evaluations. He was present at parent meetings. That school went from 163 kids to now 780 kids. So having your pastor involved is key to growing your schools. Now, the religious ed program also grew because he started having family religious ed on Sundays, and he started offering family masses on Sunday. His parish grew, everything grew, because his energy turned it around. He believed that every single person was worthy of being a missionary disciple. Now, do we pray for a heart attack? No. Do we pray for a conversion experience? No. But we do know it makes a huge difference if you get your pastor on board with you. So the more we can get that involved, the better your school and your religious ed program will be. So he's the key. He's the, as much as I would say, yeah, we can do all we can, but you need to have the backing of the pastor. So, questions?
I have a question. You had mentioned that, you just hit on the point that the pastors are the key and stuff. From the school standpoint, you have students that are regularly enrolled in religious education that are not they're in public schools, and and so that's your market that I would want to, get a hold of and work with and talk to them and let them know about opportunities at the Catholic schools. And, I'm wondering how we can create that fence that we can, not fence to build up, but to break down and be able to talk to. And how do we work directly with those students? How do we create relationships with each parish? Some parishes are fantastic. Some are, I just don't know them as well.
Yeah, I know that that's a big bone of contention, because a lot of public school kids, they go to public school for many reasons. Sometimes
Yeah.
schools can't offer them the resources that they need, especially with learning disabilities. So
Mhm.
what I would do is, do as much marketing as you can. When you have the back to school, you have a back to school mass, as many times as you can. Use Sunday as your vehicle to attract to the school, because the religious ed kids will also be there on Sunday. So do family events where you're getting names and numbers and sending, thank you for attending, work in partnership with the DRE. Because if you have a Sunday family event, whether it's a mass at 11 and then a barbecue, of course now, this is all under COVID-19, but have a barbecue or something in September where it's back to school for all the kids. Have some people, have a sign up or have a table there where if you want to seek more information about the Catholic school, or you have your DRE there, you want to seek information about the religious ed. So you have a tent set up for that. You have games and that kind of thing, but always centered around the parish community, always centered around Sundays. Because if you go in there, on a religious ed night as the school principal, and you're like, oh, all your little kids, parents, can you sign up here? Because we want you to be in the Catholic school. They might find that offensive. But if you do it as we're in a Catholic, we're at this liturgy, we're at Mass, and this is all part of our ministries to this parish community, might be a little easier way to get there.
Totally agree with that. Like, we have our events, and we would like to open up and do more events. And we're open to doing tons of events, whatever. I do like that. But you're saying to do those events at the parish, to put up
Correct.
a tent. So
right, because
to do that, I have to have a door that's open to be able
right.
to.
Well, the number one complaint that a pastor, well, there's two complaints. There's three complaints, but the one complaint is we never see the school parents at Mass on Sunday. And the second one is the school cost us a lot of money in subsidy, and we don't see the value. We don't see these kids coming to Mass on Sunday. Now, there's a lot of reasons why they don't come to Mass on Sunday. What we can do is have these events, have once a month, like Father Fedek did. Once a month on Sunday, he had a family Mass, and he had the Catholic school kids and families participate, bringing up the gifts, having their parents be hospitality, and the religious ed. So they saw it as a parish family. And you know what? It was only once a month. It grew to every Sunday. Over the year, it grew to every Sunday. So start little and have these ice cream socials or getting to know one another throughout the rest of the year.
Okay. I mean, we have great relationships with some, and we try to build on that. You're right. It can't be just during Catholic Schools Week in January.
Right.
But as an example there, some of them were rolled out red carpets for us, and some of them, several calls. Please let us participate at least once a year with you.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is what I heard from the DRE side is with these live stream masses is that they're starting to see people watching the live stream on Sunday that they normally would never have even seen in the building.
Oh, yeah.
It could also be happening with your school families, and we want to encourage that. So even if they're not coming to Mass on Sunday, here's the link for the live stream. I think live streams are going to continue, even when
that'd be great.
in the buildings. So continue to encourage that. And that once a month, it's the third graders, all the third graders, religious ed and Catholic school are sponsoring this Sunday Mass. That's the fourth graders in November, the fifth graders in December, but work in partnership for religious ed and Catholic school kids at that particular family Mass. And if your pastor's like, well, we don't do that, and say, well, Father, aren't we trying to make missionary disciples? Isn't that what our whole campaign was? Aren't we trying to get these kids to be a part of this liturgy? But, don't we want them to come back after they're confirmed? So.
Yes, ma'am. We say that.
Yeah.
Same message.
Yep. Keep it up. Just don't give up. I mean, Jesus never gave up on us, so don't give up.
Oh, we don't give up. Just
Are there any other questions? I know it seems as though oh, sorry.
I know, I was gonna say, I wanted to make a comment. I know over here, I mean, at St. Catherine's, I think Father kind of has this vision. We've kind of been doing that all along. So I know, like, for our small community, you know, we're in Sebring, so we're about 2 hours away from Venice. So like our school is very closely tied into our parish. So like, for example, like I'm the CRE, so I also go in, and actually I started with religious ed. And so when our school expanded, Father brought me on board for, you know, for the school. So it's kind of like, so everything you were saying in your slideshow, the relationship with the principal and, you know, the CRE, you know, I know for our small community, you know, we're working on that. And I think Father had that vision, you know, long ago. And so I think maybe that's why he kind of, you know, brought me on board. And so we're kind of what you were saying about the morning prayers, you know, like when school was in session, you know, I would pick students and we would do morning prayers every morning. We would do afternoon prayers. So there is a big presence. So, but I think it has a lot to do, you know, with a pastor. Also, we're a smaller community. I think maybe in the bigger cities, there's so many parishes. Here, you know, you either belong to our parish or the you know, the two other ones in the county. So I know we've been working on that. Of course, you know, there are things, you know, some of the students that maybe have left our school, I've noticed that they've come into our religious ed program. So there's still, you know, we're still getting them either way, whether through their school or through religious ed. And sometimes the religious ed students become our school students. You know, they end up coming, because I know Father promotes that. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you, Father, because I know, I think he's in on the call, and I know he's probably had that vision of the unity between both the and the school.
Yeah, it's very key. You know, you want to have the support, and not just the financial support, but the priest personnel support, you know, because it also fosters vocations too. You know, I mean, that's what I remember. And I know that they're stretched in 90 different directions, but it's really important to at least be present for sacramental experiences. So, you know, my two children went to Catholic school, and we couldn't even get a priest to hear confessions. And three priests that, you know, it was a 3-parish school. So we had the opportunity for 3 priests, and we never even get them. And it just showed you the value of Catholic education in their eyes. You know, it really hurt, because a lot of parents, this would have been a good opportunity for us to also catechize the parents, because, you know, don't assume that those parents bringing their kids to that Catholic school have any faith at all either. So whatever we can do to foster that, you know, that calling to those parents and say, we, you know, waking up your faith. Remember what it was like when you made your first communion. Let's wake that up a little bit, and let's get back to the basics of going to church. And so,
Right. Yes.
And I have a question.
sure.
From your experience working at the Archdiocese of Chicago, did you have any opportunity to work with the schools up there? And if so, what was their overall relationship with the parishes and the religious education programs?
So the reason why I brought up this particular priest is because that school, I was assigned to work with the parish and the school. And, you know, because it was a dying school, and it was also a dying parish. And so as a parish vitality coordinator, I went in and I worked with that pastor to talk about how do we, first of all, tell our catechists and our Catholic school teachers that they're disciples. So we started doing we did 5 retreats that year as in-services for the Catholic school teachers. I did that during the day, and then the catechists in the evening, where I gave them Bible passages, and I had them kind of wake up their own spirituality, because you can't give away something that you don't have. So when these teachers started getting excited about their faith and their understanding of being a disciple of Jesus Christ, then they were able to share that with their kids. And so the second year, it was, now that we know Jesus, Now I'm going to tell you about Jesus. And so we spent the second year really in reinforcing the Catholic, like their religion books, you know, what's in it that's for them, and it's how do we awaken up their heart and not just their head. And so the kids got involved in service projects. We had social activities. We did, you know, movie nights with the Catholic school kids and also the religious ed kids together. We had, like I already shared, family mass we did that grew each week. So we had a step-by-step process to waking up the teachers first. We got to wake them up, shake them up, you know, give them a little prayer life, let them know that they are called to be a disciple, work with the school kids and the religious ed kids and their parents, and then by having them come to mass and be a part of the liturgy. And it's very effective. And actually now this priest is the secretary to the cardinal. So, like, we just got you on board with this great school, and now you're going to be the secretary of the cardinal. We lost him as a pastor. So anyway, it's kind of a step-by-step process, but it really, and then what's the parish doing at the same time? The parish is learning how they too are missionary disciples, because the worst thing you can do is say all these kids come to Sunday mass and it's the family mass, but yet you have some crabby people that now this kid and his family are sitting in their pew. So Father also worked with his parish to say, now this particular Sunday, you know, we're going to have families here with children. How do we welcome them? How do we engage, you know? We're going to have a social afterwards. Please let them go to line first. You know, all these things that you think people would know to do, but they just didn't. So.
Thank you, Ann.
I have a question, if I might, about overcoming objections. So I'm the developmental director at Cardinal Mooney, and I'm an alumni, so I'm familiar with a lot of the priests in our diocese because they've been here for a long time. And some of our priests are very welcoming and will meet with me and will come to campus for tours. But when we invited all the priests in the diocese, we had one come and take a tour of campus and take us up on that. And I have had priests where when I took this position, I went to a different parish every weekend for like 3 months so I could meet all the priests in our diocese. And I've had ones where I introduce myself, tell them who I am, and they flat out said to me, "You don't want to talk to me," and they'll turn and walk away. And
wow.
So also kind of, you know, like, how do you overcome, I don't know if it's an old stigmata, maybe they didn't like somebody at Cardinal Mooney, maybe there's a nasty rumor that Cardinal Mooney doesn't need money, you know, so overcoming just kind of when you get the door slammed in your face immediately by somebody who I regard as being on my home team.
Mm-hmm. Now, I can't speak for priests. I do have a brother-in-law that's a pastor at a parish. And priest presence has always been an issue in Catholic high schools, particularly if it's not run by a religious community. So it would be a different story if it was Jesuit Catholic, because then you might have a Jesuit involved in that. What I suggest is see if the bishop, have a conversation with the bishop, that Ben Hopper can maybe talk to him about this, is to invite your younger priest or your priest with energy towards the high school to serve as your campus minister. So somebody from the clergy is assigned to Cardinal Mooney as the vocation campus minister. And then that priest, it could be shared, one priest a day. You could have 5 different priests do this. But their sole responsibility is to help with the spiritual life of the community, teachers as well as students. And I'm telling you, if you have that model, there is a lot of money behind that. Because parents sending a kid to a Catholic high school, we want to make sure that our child's spiritual life is being taken care of. Now, the ideal that would be the theology teachers that you have in your high school, but it may not be that, because some parents may be old school in thinking that the only way the kids can really learn about Jesus is to talk to a priest. My husband's one of those. You know, I have a master's in divinity, so does my brother-in-law, but when he has a question about theology, I'm going to call Father John, which is fine. You know, okay, whatever. But you know, if you can get some priest to commit to your school, look for at least 3.
Well, we have a chaplain. We do have Father Eric, who's at Incarnation. He's our chaplain. He's wonderful. The kids absolutely love him, and a lot of our seniors love him as well over at Incarnation. And Father Mark is one of our alumni, and he comes to campus quite frequently. And so we have that embodiment here. I think it's more just looking for that connection, like when you go to speak with somebody and they're not really interested in speaking to you, how do you make that connection happen in an organic way?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm kind of in the same boat that you're in, trying to get to know new pastors in the area and seeing, what their religious ed program is like. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe start off small, see if you can get through the 2, Father Eric and Father Mark, and ask them, say, hey, I'd like to meet some of these other pastors. Could you help me with this? It could also be that some pastors are not aware of, the gifts of a Catholic high school. They could also think that, well, she wants to talk to me because she wants money. Whatever the stigma is, you probably won't be able to get in unless you have somebody introduce you in. That's just the way that I'm thinking.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's those 2. If you already have 2 that are on your side, I know a friend of mine belongs to his kids go to your school, and he's good friends with the priest. He's friends with Father Kevin at St. Michael's. So
Okay.
some parents even that have good relationships with your, priests that are part of your school. That could be it, have a dinner party or something like that socially, where you're not there to sell, you're not there to campaign, but you're there to meet.
Absolutely.
A little bit easier, casual way. Priests always like dinner, they always like to be fed. So at least my brother-in-law does.
They do. I have a couple that like to go to lunch. So
Right. Am I right, Father? I'm seeing a priest laughing in the background.
Yeah. For the most part, it's very welcoming. And, like I have gone to the Northern Deanery meetings and met a lot of the priests who are outside of our 1-hour kind of driving radius, and they really have been welcoming and lovely. But, I don't ask the priests for donations until I've met them 4 or 5 times. If I don't know you, like, let's have a relationship first, because this longevity of the school and the Catholic community that we have is really what we're trying to build off of.
Right. One of the things, too, that we were going to start in Chicago and we never got to it was something called the Red Hat Society. You know how we have the Blue Ribbon School of Excellence? Well, we were looking at how do we make that Blue Ribbon School of Excellence from a Catholic perspective? How do we know that this school truly has Catholic identity? And so this new superintendent that we just hired, that's one of the things that I will talk with, is how can the religious ed department help the Catholic schools foster the Catholic identity and get an award for it, like Blue Ribbon. I mean, teachers work really hard on Blue Ribbon principles to acquire that, national certification. Wouldn't it be nice if the Catholic Church gave our schools that as well?
Right.
So that's one of the initiatives that I hope to at least bring up in November. It went probably August, September. I'm not going to hit them up first, but
Sure.